Thank you, JC, for that. Lesson and thoughts. Very important for us to never lose sight of that reality, of that truth. Again, I want to thank everyone for being out and taking time out of your busy week to be here and worship with us this evening. We're coming really close. We've said this for probably about a month now, that we're getting close to the end of our study in the life of Christ. And I think we got one more left, and I think Michael's got that one next weekend next Wednesday, to kind of pull all this together. So we're going to talk tonight for just a few minutes about the Ascension. And like I said earlier, I feel like it's almost to a spot when we think about the life of Christ, we kind of end it when he comes back to life, when he gets raised from the grave. And the things that he did in that 40-ish day period kind of seem to be the end, and we don't really look at the Ascension a lot. You know, in a person's life, they're really, your birthday and the day you die are two pretty important days. Now, for Christ, he got another one in there, the day he rose. But we also have another very important day in the life of Christ, and that's his Ascension. You know, birthdays are really important to us. You notice these two men, our federal government has even made it important enough for us to recognize these birthdays. It's not Thomas Jefferson, it's George Washington and Martin Luther King. Those are two federally recognized, sorry, Billy Bob, two federally recognized members or people that are very recognizable, and federal government has decided to deem that those birthdays are worth recognizing. In addition to that, we all recognize Christmas. You know, the federal government recognizes Christmas as the day that Christ was born. His birthday is important, and we recognize that. Said birthdays are important to us. In the mornings, a lot of times if I get up and get to work early enough, the radio station will have a little section, and in that section is, it's your birthday. And so they go through and recognize people that have birthdays on your day, and it's always interesting on my birthday. I like to see who was born on my birthday. And as a matter of fact, that's Bob Dylan, and his birthday is today. So birthdays are important to us. We've actually got, I believe, at least one member of our congregation has a birthday today, and I won't call her out. But birthdays are important to us. We remember them. We've got them on our app. We look at them so we can remember those things because they're important to us. You know, the other thing that's important to us and we remember and we memorialize, are the days that people leave this earth. I've got a picture up here as I was doing some study and research and looking through some things. This is actually a picture of the tomb of the unknown soldier. And if it doesn't look familiar to you, and if you've been to Washington, D.C., you wouldn't have seen this. This is actually the picture of a tomb of the unknown soldier in Russia. I was not aware that they saw value in memorializing those things like that, but this is the picture of that. In England, I believe, this is another memorial of the Royal Air Force there, memorializing the 55,000 or so air crew that were lost during World War II. So we want to remember those days. And again, we remember the life of Christ. We remember the day that he was hung on that cross. We remember the things that he went through, the suffering and the pain, the anguish that he went through on that day. And as I was looking and trying to tie this back into the Bob Dylan theme, trying to think of things, you can go online and find a chronological order of people and their deaths and their days. And so as I was looking at that, I saw that Bonnie and Clyde actually were killed and I think I might have been looking at this yesterday, so it was either yesterday or today, but those things are memorialized, those deaths, and so it is with Christ. But you know, the one thing we don't think about a lot with Christ is his ascension. If you go to the greeting card section, you'll find a lot of Easter cards. You'll find a lot of Christmas cards. You'll find a lot of birthday cards. But you won't find, I don't believe, an ascension card. We seem to kind of forget about that. We don't speak on it a whole lot. It's just kind of a piece of Christ's life that we look at it, or I look at it a lot as when he was risen from the dead. That was kind of the end. And it really wasn't. And the ascension is very, very important to us. To help maybe allow us to look and visualize some things and think about it, I found this picture of this house, this really gorgeous house. If you like big houses, and the older I get, I like them less, I think, but I still like looking at pictures of them. And I want us to think about it for a time, the amount of time and effort and work that went into creating this house. The architects, the land work, the dirt work that had to be done to build this house. How crazy would it be, or how silly would it be to build a house like that and then not have anyone live in it? Just have it be empty. Just have it be a void of anything. Think about a big feast. I've got a picture here of a feast. Would we ever spend all the time and effort to put a feast together and put it on a table and not have anyone enjoy it? We wouldn't. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't spend the time and effort and resources to do those things without somebody there to enjoy it, without that component. I've got a picture here of a bridge in Italy that's being demolished or detonated. I believe in 2018 there were some accidents that happened on that bridge. Some people lost their lives, and so the Italian government decided it was worth it to just take that bridge down. And so as I look at that picture, you can see obviously the individual explosions that happened to bring that building down. And I think about how much time and effort and planning went into that effort to bring that bridge down. And when we think about a house with no one to live in it, or a feast with no one to eat it, people wouldn't spend the amount of time and effort to plan and bring this building down without having a detonator. And in my mind, I see that, and I see one guy he's the lucky guy. He's the guy out of the group that gets to push the plunger down and watch that stuff go up. Those things need a detonator. And I think tonight we'll look just a little bit of how the Ascension is kind of the detonator for a lot of things. You know, the Ascension marks a lot of things. It marks the completion of Christ's work here on earth. The work that he did while he was here, the things that he did, the examples that he gave for us. This Ascension is kind of a compilation of all that and an approval by God. It signals the end of his limitations here on this earth, of having that physical body as he ascended. You know, it marks his full coronation to sit on the right hand with God. It signaled the sending of his Holy Spirit. In John chapter 14 and verse 16, he mentions there that he's going to send another helper. In John chapter 14 again in verses 2 and 3, he talks about going and preparing a place for us. This is him going to the heaven and preparing that place for us. And we'll talk about this a little bit more and hopefully draw this what it means to us. But it really is the passing of responsibility of evangelism from him to us, to each and every one of us. I want to read, I apologize, that's a little small, but I want to read Luke's account of this, or Luke's beginning in Acts chapter 1, talking about the ascension there. It says, "In the first book, O Theophilus, I have dealt with all that Jesus began to do and teach, until the day when he was taken up, after he had given commands through the Holy Spirit to the apostles whom he had chosen. He presented himself alive to them after his suffering by many proofs, appearing to them during 40 days and speaking about the kingdom of God. And while staying with them, he ordered them not to depart from Jerusalem, but to wait for the promise of the Father, which, he said, you heard from me. For John baptized with water, but you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit not many days from now. So when they had come together, they asked him, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom of Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know the times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the earth. And when he had said these things, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing into heaven as he went, behold, 2 men stood by them in white robes, and said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. I want to look at just a little bit this evening for just a few minutes on the attributes of the ascension. I want to look at the power of the ascension, look at the nature, what it really was. And then lastly, there's a lot of meanings of the ascension to us, but we'll pick out a topic on the meaning of that ascension. So let's look at the power first. In Acts chapter 1 there, we read in verse 11, it says there about this gentle rebuke from the angels. It said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. The angels there ask a question, why are you looking? Why are you staring up into heaven? And I can imagine the apostles there as they were looking up. We all have probably been at the airport and taken loved ones to the airport and watched them get on the plane. I remember many, many years ago, Delonda and I took her baby sister to get on a plane to go to Japan to teach English. And as we sat there, we stayed in the airport and we just watched the plane take off. And we were just gazing. And so I can understand the apostles and what was going through their mind. The loss that they were experiencing. The loss that they knew was coming. The absence of leadership, intimacy, protection that Jesus provided them. They were, for an instant, looking at what they had lost and feeling sorry for themselves. Looking at what was no longer going to be with them and wondering all the things that we wonder when we watch people go away. The power of the ascension, if we're not filled with confidence, we don't understand the ascension. I want to look over, again, Luke's account of this in Luke chapter 24 and verse 52 and 53. This is what the apostles did. Acts tells us that they just went away. They went back to Jerusalem. But Luke here in Luke says, and they worshiped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy and were continually in the temple blessing God. They understood then the power. They went back to Jerusalem like thunderbolts. They were excited because they were starting to see what the ascension meant. They were starting to understand a little bit more of what the ascension meant to them and to Christianity and to their faith. You know, if we're not going back into the world as we go to work tomorrow, we go back into the world, if we're not going with that type of confidence and power and joy, we're losing the power of that ascension. You know, it detonates everything. We talked about that detonator. It detonates everything. The kickoff point, if you will, for the whole purpose of Christ being here. For us to truly take advantage of that power and understand that power, we've got to understand the apostles there didn't lose something, they gained something. And we gained it too by being a part of the Christian family. We've got to let our hearts be open to understanding that. I read a quote from somebody that says, if life doesn't break your heart at least once a day, it shows a real lack of imagination. And that's true. We come into a lot of things, and we come into a lot of hurt each and every day. And if we got really two choices. We can let our hearts be numb by that and be uncaring or unfeeling, or we can get a source of glorious joy that knows that we have, that glorious joy that we have by being acquainted with the ascension, with the power of Christ's ascension. I want to look at the nature for just a minute. The word ascension kind of has a double meaning. It's a spatial meaning, but it has something much deeper. A few weeks ago, as I get up on Saturday mornings a lot, and we'll sit there and drink my coffee, and I end up watching a lot of YouTube. And a few weeks ago, about the only thing I could find on YouTube was the video of King Charles III being coronated as king. And as I was watching that, I saw, and I didn't watch all of it, but I watched a little bit of it, and I was able to see him go and sit on the throne. And he ascended up to that throne. And they placed a crown on him, and there were a lot of things that happened in there, a lot of pomp and circumstance around that. But I got to thinking, you and I, if we could go over to where that throne is at. We could walk up the steps to that throne and sit on it. But would we truly ascend to that throne like King Charles did? No. We would be regular people sitting on a throne. When King Charles ascended that throne and walked up those steps and sat down, he changed forever his relationship with him and the people that he presides over, people of the United Kingdom. When we think about the ascension of Christ, it's not space travel. That ascension has a much, much deeper meaning. God does not reside in the heavens. There's a picture here of a gentleman named Yuri Gagarin. Some of you may remember him. He was a cosmonaut that was the first human in space, and I believe he did that in around April of 1961. And when he came home or got back, he made a statement that he looked around while he was up there and he saw no evidence of heaven or God. And I guess he's probably right. God doesn't reside in the heavens. When we think about the heavens, the sky, the universe, God doesn't reside there. He doesn't interact with us like the gentleman in the attic does with people on the first floor. God's got a different purpose and a different realm, if you will. And I can equate that to somebody that might be a playwright. When we think about a playwright, somebody that writes a play, they create a universe. And the characters in that play only know anything about that playwright, about that author, that they write into the script. That's the way our relationship with God is. God created our universe. And the only reason why we know anything about him is because he wrote himself in. He wrote himself in the form of Christ to come down to this earth to teach us about him. In Acts chapter 1, go back there, Jesus Christ ascended to another part. He didn't ascend to the heavens. If you read Acts chapter 1 again, it's a singular word. He ascended to heaven. He's not in the heavens. He's not in the ethereal sky. He's now on his throne in his position. He's ascended. His relationship with us has changed forever. Look at how Mary Magdalene acted when she saw the Savior. In John chapter 20, verse 16, it says, Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned and said to him in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. You know, when we hear or see this or read this, it might make you wonder why couldn't Mary touch Jesus? Why couldn't she hold on to him? There were other people that did. You know, we find in Matthew where the women fell down at his feet and took hold of his feet. We know that as he had his discourse with Thomas, he told Thomas, come and touch me. I think maybe what Jesus was trying to explain to Mary here is, don't cling on to me now. Let me go. Let me go and ascend. That way, I'll always be with you. I'll always be there with you. Nobody can separate me from you if you let me ascend. He wasn't talking to Mary about physically touching him. He was talking to Mary about emotionally not clinging to him, but allowing him to go so he could be with her. If he ascends, he's what he was while he was on this earth. As he ascends, explodes and becomes universal for everybody. Everything Jesus was and is detonated into the whole world through his ascension. Now for just a minute, see what we can glean from this and take from this ascension. In Acts chapter 1 and verse 6 there, we start learning. So when they had come together, they asked him, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? The apostles are looking for Jesus to do something. They're looking for him to restore the kingdom. Remember, the thought process of the Jews at the time was that somebody was going to come and restore the kingdom. And after all they had seen, after 40 days of seeing Jesus resurrected and walking with him, they still didn't understand. They're like, are you going to come and restore the kingdom? Look what Jesus replies to them, or how he replies to them. In verse 8, he says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth. I think we're tapping into the meaning of his ascension. It's that passing of the responsibility to evangelize. It's that passing of responsibility to teach others about him. Comes from his ascension. You know, Christ was one of the greatest teachers that ever walked on the face of the earth. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 20 and 21, writing there to those at Ephesus, it says, but that is not the way you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth is in Jesus. Now this is the ESV version. The original Greek's a little bit different. The King James Version is a little bit different. And I want to put that up here and see the difference in this too. It says, but you have not so learned Christ. If so be that ye have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus. The ESV version there leads you to believe that you heard, is a version that leads you to believe that you heard about him. But if you notice the King James Version, it says you heard him. Jesus was never in Ephesus, I don't believe. Never had the ability to speak to the people that they're writing to here. But others did. And I think when we think about the meaning of the ascension and all the things that it tied into us, we are now Christ's ambassadors. We are now Christ's mouthpiece, if you will, to those in the world and those that we come into contact with. His ascension left us in a responsible position to be that ambassador, to understand the Bible is all about Christ. And Jesus spent his time here on earth trying to let people know that the Bible wasn't about them. The Bible's not about you. It's not about me. The Bible's about Christ. That good news. And it's our responsibility to go and teach that to others. And I think and when we do that, that's Christ through us teaching. We are challenged to do that. We've had several lessons about the Great Commission. And Jesus did that right before he ascended. Once he ascended, that's on us. It's our responsibility to be that ambassador, that one that takes goodwill out to those that we come into contact with. And when we do that, that's Christ through us. And I think that's our meaning that we take away from the ascension. The power of it, the nature of it, and then finally knowing that we've got that power to be able to go and share that with Christ. The thoughts are yours this evening. We didn't talk about the first principles, but if there be one in the audience this evening that wants the prayers of the church or wants to come and be baptized and join that kingdom, there's not a better time to do that or a better place to do that than right now. So if there be one in either case, we'd ask you to come while we stand and sing the song that's been selected.